Hi, I'm Pedro from Coffee Parts, and today we're looking at the Eureka Manuale versus the Baratza Settes. So we're going to look at the Eureka and the Baratza, but we'll start by grinding out some coffee, see how the coffee looks like, what the workflow looks like, and what the specs and differences are on each of these machines, and which is appropriate for who. So let's start with the Eureka Manuale. So the Eureka Manuale runs 50mm flat blades. The activation is based on the micro switch here, so it doesn't have a timer function. You got a stepless or worm drive for infinite grind adjustability, and the portafilter support here where you do have to actually hold the portafilter. So we're just going to grind out some coffee and see what it looks like. So the grind is really consistent, not clumpy at all, quite fluffy, and really nicely evenly distributed. For a grind of its price, it is nice. You do have to hold the portafilter so the support doesn't hold it by itself, and you do have to start and stop it yourself. So I guess you have to eyeball it. As you are grinding on demand based on a start-stop function, you really want to have a scale next to the grinder so you know you got whatever grams you wanted, to say 20 grams. Because by eyeball, you will be quite close, but it's easy to be a gram or two off. In saying that, the grind is nice, and the grinder isn't too loud for a grinder of this price point. Obviously, compared to more expensive grinders, it is a louder grinder. Moving over to the Baratza, we have two Baratzas on display, the 30 and the 270, because the Manuale sits in the price point between the two. So to be fair, it's normally compared against the 30, but I think it's more similar in some respects to the 270. Now the difference between these two grinders is on the 30, you've got 30 macro movements to dial in the grinder. And on the 270, you've got 30 macro and 9 micro, making it 270 movements to be able to dial it in. On the Eureka, it was stepless, so you could really dive it in as much or as little as you want. And to be more comparable, you do need to be comparing to the 270 to get that kind of adjustability. But generally they're compared to the 30s. Now, on the 30, over the Eureka, you've got a timer function. So with Eureka, you have to start and stop the grind. Here you do have it to grind by time with the ability to top it up. One thing that's the same is on the 30, like the Eureka, you do have to hold your portafilter, while on the 270, it does have a portafilter support that can easily hold the portafilter. Let's grind out some coffee and see it in action. So with the coffee, once again, like the Eureka, very consistent. I think the distribution in the center of the portafilter is neater, because with the Baratza, you're grinding from the hopper straight through and down. The blades actually sit there and the coffee runs vertically, and it does dive into the center. So it's a 40mm conical blade with the external blade turning compared to a 50mm flat. Because the grind goes straight through the center of the conical blade, you get very neatly into the portafilter. Very nice, even distribution of coffee. Very fluffy and not many boulders. One thing to note though, it is quite a loud grinder. So the Eureka comparatively does make less noise. And that could be a big thing for some people. Now, one thing that the Baratza does heavily win on is that you can easily change between brew methods. With Eureka, it's really good for espresso. It can do filter, but moving between espresso and filter is cumbersome. With the Baratza, it's super easy to go from espresso to filter and back. And because it is stepped, although stepless is better for espresso, because it is stepped, it's easy to go and come back to the same position. When it comes to the support, you have the portafilter support here. You can either easily take it out or move it to a different position to, say, hold your V60 or an AeroPress or whatever it might be. On the 270, dialing it in is the same. You can still move from espresso to filter and back easily, and obviously you've got the bottom dial here for the micro adjustments. But when it comes to the portafilter support, on the 270 does hold the portafilter for a hands-free operation. And if you want to go from espresso to, just say, a V60 or an AeroPress, move that to the side, push that in, turn it, and it's really quick to go from, say, espresso to filter. So if you wanted to do an espresso in the morning and a V60 in the afternoon, quite easy to do. Once again, when it comes to grinding, they're identical in the sense of same blade, same motors. It really is just the notches going from 30 to 270 notches. And from the timer function, you've got 1 time, and over here you got preset 3 different times, which are easy to adjust. On the Manuale, it is manual. You grind, you start and stop it yourself. So which grinder is better? Well, it really depends what you're using it for. In terms of build quality, you can't beat the Eureka. The Eureka really is a solid little unit made in Italy. For espresso, I think they're very much on par. I do like the Eureka. I've got a soft spot for them. Really easy to dial in for espresso, and I think for their price point, really good results. If you want to do espresso and filter from the same grinder, then you can't beat the Baratza. Being able to move from espresso to filter and back, and the brew methods by just adjusting the support here really is gold. What I would say though is if I was comparing them, I'd rather compare the Manuale to the 270, although the 270 does cost a little bit more because of the extra adjustability, and I would buy a 270 over a 30 because it does make a difference having those 270 rather than 30 notches when you're really diving into espresso, especially if you've got a better machine. One last little note, the Baratza does have less retention than the Manuale, but you can always compensate by that by grinding out a second, knocking into the knocking tube and then grinding out your proper shot. So it is a bit of wastage, but you can compensate for it quite easily. I'd like to know in the comments below, which of these grinders would you pick, or which of these grinders do you have? And like always, if this video has brought you value, hit that thumbs up. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe. Thank you and see you on the next video.